Hi, it's Lee, and welcome to the Tesla Economist. Some people think that in these economic environments, Tesla is being hit extra hard as a growth company. Yes, in a recession, growth companies are hit harder. Investors struggle to look at a 5 to 10-year future. They struggle to have cash tied up that long without seeing any returns and look for instant returns with dividend stocks. Or the risk of such a company not even making it through such a period. All justifiable concerns. But should Tesla really be labelled in such a category? Tesla is very much a growth company, with a target of perhaps 14 times more vehicles produced by the end of this decade than will be produced this year. But Tesla's growth is not about building demand and trying to get consumers to adopt a revolutionary new product. People already use cars. We don't have to reconvince them again. Tesla have just mass-produced a better propelled car. Well, no, that's not all. Tesla have leapfrogged the traditional car manufacturing processes as a result of being able to use first principles thinking and redesigned the vehicle from the ground up now that they no longer have to contain components like an engine. Tesla have utilized every advantage they can think of when now using a battery to propel a vehicle. It's improved handling, safety, and a plethora of smart features. Oh, and they also made the car a robot that drives itself. These are big jumps in evolution, or arguably, revolution. Tesla have looked at all the major expenses of running a car and simply eliminated them, thus reducing cost of ownership to a level where the traditional internal combustion engine can no longer compete. Hence why Tesla has been growing in popularity so much. Alright, legacy couldn't catch up. They're too stuck in their old ways whilst also risking cannibalizing their profitable ICE business and stuck with other traditional systems like a car dealer network that was of benefit to them at one stage but now is holding back their potential profitability. Whereas it counts as further vertical integration for Tesla, it also appears so far that the Chinese EVs are having to resort to their car dealer network for the international sales too. Right, we do have all these Chinese car companies here to stop Tesla's growth. Except they're kind of cheating. They reverse engineer as best they can from what Tesla is doing. Then they remove as much cost as possible, while still trying to look good on paper when it comes to range and specifications. Of course, Tesla's technology makes it hard to remove as much as Tesla have at some times, like removing radar and likely even ultrasonic sensors. Then all their buttons and air vents. Yet the Chinese are still able to undercut Tesla on price, as they also decided to remove profits. However, when you drive one, then it quickly becomes obvious where the costs have been cut. And it's a Chinese brand which a lot of consumers simply don't like. Chinese brands don't have as good a reputation and no history or heritage. China have been making low-cost ICE cars too, but they didn't take over the ICE industry. Yet people think that the Chinese EVs will be a success and will dominate the industry. Or no, actually, they'll be even cleverer than that and simply buy out Western brands as a disguise to trick consumers to buy them. In fact, they already are, with brands like Polestar and MG. Well, Volvo sold for less than $2 billion and MG sold for about £50 million. It's going to be a different story if they want a real brand like BMW or Mercedes. It will be a tough marketing campaign, especially when their cars drive so badly, like BYD. Consumers are simply willing to pay more for a Tesla over a Chinese brand. In fact, just about anyone who can will. And if they can't afford a Tesla, then they may first start to look at other brands that they trust, like Hyundai or Kia, for a lower cost option, who may eventually use lower cost LFP cells and stop trying to compete with Tesla for long range. Cars are expensive. It's the most expensive consumer item for the vast majority of people. They want to feel confident in their purchase, in a brand that they can trust and willing to pay extra for it. On top of that, Chinese ICE vehicles depreciate at a more rapid rate. The Toyota may be a slightly higher cost than a Chinese brand, but in a few years, when it comes time to upgrade, the resale value is significantly better, and the depreciation on the Chinese brand has actually ended up costing more. Not to mention the added risk of the reduced safety whilst driving it the whole time. The Chinese are also flooding the market with no concerns of making massive amounts of profit, but simply gaining market share, and consolidating battery-powered vehicles with hybrids and giving them one umbrella term, new energy vehicles. Yes, the CCP may be able to support them for now, but if it's millions of vehicles a year, losing thousands of dollars each, it's not so sustainable. The Chinese may be able to pump out all these vehicles at astounding rates, but they're all sedans, compacts, and a few basic crossovers, yet with minimal range. Their battery source is LFP, which is a great battery cell and serves a tremendous application, but it's not a one-size-fits-all application. With LFP cells, you can't offer large sedans, SUVs, vans, or pickup trucks without reducing range to perhaps 100 to 115 miles, as these vehicles are simply too large and heavy, and they can't offer long range, period. In fact, the compacts also suffer, as the wheelbase is so small, there is minimal space for the actual battery pack. Nonetheless, it does serve some applications, but if they opt into nickel cells, they lose their competitive advantage, and even legacy autos will be able to compete at lower cost cells due to their massive capital investments to reduce cell costs through economies of scale. Anyway, I'm not meaning to get at the Chinese, I'm just pointing out buyer behaviour. It was one of my favourite courses I did for my business degree, and it was thoroughly interesting. My point is that I don't think the Chinese are going to slow down Tesla's growth. In fact, if anything, they may help the adoption of EVs. People using EVs means more chargers and a larger movement to drive electric. And then when we get to the other markets like pickup trucks, SUVs, large sedans, or any long-range vehicle, then that is just for companies that have invested in nickel-based cells, which is just Tesla and legacy autos, really. And legacy autos can't hit half volume production on one line, and Tesla already at 3 times volume production in Shanghai with the Model Y, which makes me think that they can possibly hit 5 times volume production with the new factories, even if it takes a few years. That would mean for every factory Tesla build, Legacy would need to build perhaps 5 to 10 times as many for the same output. The same applies for their battery and cell factories, about 10 times the size as Tesla's, which take about 4 years to even build. Whereas Tesla may be able to construct a 4680 factory in about 6 months, with even more output. Legacy can't catch up, not even collectively. In fact, Tesla's lead will actually be increasing at an even faster rate when 4680s start to progress. Therefore, Tesla is different from other growth companies. They already have a huge market and demand. They just aren't able to deliver to everyone yet. And yes, I agree their price points are not affordable for the masses yet. But for those of you who struggle to understand supply and demand, that doesn't matter if they keep selling every car they make. Tesla is still very much supply constrained, but they have one model that is just so popular it makes sense to fulfill all the demand for that first, the Model Y. And from there move on to other models, or possibly a jump in technology like robotaxis, or perhaps then finally ramp up the Model 3. Then other models will start to follow. But no, still not affordable models. Tesla basically has a monopoly on mass-produced energy-dense batteries. And what are we seeing as the next models to come out? The semi-truck, likely highly profitable, and of course the Cybertruck, and perhaps the Roadster, which I think was really just more of a fun project. Then after that we have a compact. Well, possibly, but I guess it would depend on cell supply. If we're talking about a $30,000 Tesla, then we have demand in excess of 10 million units a year probably. That's a lot of cells needed. So my guess bet would be that Tesla start at the top of the market and work their way down, where there is more profit per kilowatt hour and less demand to match the limited supply. Also think about it like this. Tesla only have the 4680 cell. This is their energy-dense cell that can be used in all these monopolistic applications. If Tesla was going to make some sort of affordable smaller vehicle, then it would be wise to use a much lower cost, less energy-dense cell or chemistry. Also, there simply isn't enough nickel for 10 million or more of these affordable Teslas a year. It would be a sacrilege to waste them in a car like that. Alternatively, perhaps CATL really are doubling down on LFP and trying to work with Tesla for a solution there, so they can offer something more affordable. In the meantime though, Tesla wouldn't stop making more 4680 factories, which means there would still be a lot of supply, more than enough for Model Y, Cybertruck and Semi. It is possible that Tesla may just end up making robotaxis and earmarking all the 4680s for those, as if that business expands, the profits literally look stupid and make the rest of their auto sales look like BYD's BEV profit. So it's a possibility. But back to growth. If Tesla are making consumer vehicles with 4680, then they can simply grow into new markets like SUVs, vans, sports cars, etc. There are a lot of different models that Tesla can offer. Just look how many BMW offer. Tesla basically offered 2. There is so much demand left for different types of Teslas. But then eventually, when they do offer an affordable compact, which I don't think will be as small as some people are expecting, as Tesla's number one concern is safety. They want all Teslas to be safe. And the smaller you get, then the physics simply counts against you. And physics is the rule. But perhaps small enough to hit a $30,000 price point and be practical for inner city driving and parking. So Tesla has already grown. They have the market and demand. They just need to add to the supply. And aside from cheap, low-range sedans and compacts, no one else is going to fill in any of these other market segments before Tesla. And no, not the Ford F-150 Lightning. Cybertruck will run laps around that. But to the original question, is Tesla really still a growth company? Well, yes, they are still growing an enormous amount, especially with energy still to come. But unlike your typical growth company that has to reinvest everything back into the company and not pay dividends for another 10 years or so, Tesla is insanely profitable the whole way. And there simply isn't enough labor for Tesla to reinvest everything back into the company. The Giga Texas building alone cost just over $1 billion to build. Tesla are going to profit $6 to $6.5 billion in Q4. Could Tesla build 6 Giga Texases every quarter? Of course not. There are not enough people. Of course, when these new factories are ramped up, that will eventually approach closer to $20 billion a quarter. Not far off $2 billion a week operating income. Could Tesla build a factory a week? The returns of these factories are too high, with 1,000% return on asset, or even more likely, and that doesn't even include FSD sales. Tesla can more than fund any of their growth, especially when these new factories are online. They can fund the entire decade's factories in one quarter's earnings. How crazy is that? Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.